welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you so much for joining us here on the program. Our program today is a program I think you're going to enjoy. It makes a lot of sense to me. I've dealt with these different concepts and trying to understand the world in which we live. And I think that the lyrics of this song best epitomize what we're going to be talking about. This is not the title that we're going to be talking about, but it epitomizes the title. And it goes something like, no, actually it goes exactly like this. Is that all there is? Is that all there is? Is that all there is, my friend? Then let's keep dancing. Let's break out the booze and have a ball. If that is all there is. Yes, that's it. That's all there is. There is nothing more. Let's all go home and sequester ourselves once again for the next 40 years. Jennifer Kaufman, she is the producer of a movie. No, the movie is not called Is That All There Is? The movie is actually entitled, and I have watched it, There's Got to Be More to Life. We're going to have some fun with this program. Jennifer, thank you for joining us, I hope you're glad you're here.
I am super glad to be here with you, Richard. It's so much fun. And I didn't know that you sang. Had I known, I would have done like backup or something.
I'm open for anything, really. I've always said I will try something once and sometimes twice. And if I like it, I'll keep going. And if I don't, then I will have tried it twice and said I don't like it. But I'm not going to sit there going, I don't like it if I've never tried it. You know, that always perplexes me about little kids and vegetables. You know, have you ever tried a Brussels sprout? No, but I don't like them. But how do you know that you don't like them if you've never tried them? Did you like going down the slide? Yeah, I did. How did you know you would like it going down the slide? Because you'd never done it before. I mean, this is the perplexing issue. But I don't know where I was going with that, but what I will tell you is there is more to this life. And the movie, There's Got to Be More to Life, which is now showing, having to do with transforming through trauma from surviving to thriving. Oh, you have stolen, but I don't care. I'm glad you have stolen the phrase that I use always on this program, that we want to move. My phrase actually goes like this, Jennifer. Moving from survival to thrival. I will say, I thought I invented the word until I looked it up in Webster's, and it turns out it is a legitimate word, thrival. Tell me about this concept, because there's one element that I was watching in the movie that I thought was so fascinating, and I'm not going to give any spoilers because I don't think there are any spoilers to give. I think you just need to see it. That'll open up your processes, your thought processes. And that was the statement, and I can't remember who made it, that trauma is a gift. But before you jump into trauma is a gift, let's not forget it. You're obviously asking that very question. There's got to be more to life to have created this documentary.
Yes. That was my question. I am a survivor of the 2013 Boston Marathon bombings. I had childhood trauma and some early adulthood trauma. And I pondered this question, there's got to be more to life. I don't understand. And as a kid growing up, I had, having been raised both Catholic and Protestant and in the church, I was like, why is it that you have to die to experience heaven? I never quite understood that. And so for me, I've been on this curious journey, my life going, how do you create heaven on earth? And, having gone through various traumas, I didn't understand it, to be candid. In the beginning, I didn't understand, why is this happening to me? And I think a lot of people, I think your viewers probably can relate to this, right? In my experience, everyone has experienced some form of trauma in their life. And we've asked ourselves, why is this happening to us? That kind of victimhood mentality, whether we know it or not. And And I just got like, okay, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be more to life. And it was in my journey of rising up from terrorism, and it took several years to get this, but I'm like, what if trauma is a gift? It actually empowered me at that point in time. To be candid, one of my meditation teachers said to me about 6 months after the bombings, she said, one day you're going to see this as the greatest gift of your life. And I remember being angry. The greatest gift of your life. I'm like, this experience, terrified me and it shattered me. And it's supposed to be a gift. But there was something about what she said to me that day that just lingered. And it took a while later to realize, wait a minute here. What if this is happening for me rather than to me? What if this is here to help me grow and evolve and get me on my purpose, actually? And that's what I discovered it really did.
You have uttered the very phrases that I use on this program, almost every program, about looking for those new ways of living, because the old ways don't work. Just look around you. They are not working. And things seem like they're getting worse. But you've also brought to mind that wonderful Chinese proverb or story, whatever you want to call it. You're probably familiar with the one I'm thinking of, about the farmer and his son, and the neighbor of the farmer and his son, who comes over almost every day saying, hey, how are things going? And the farmer will tell him. And at the end of the story, the farmer's neighbor will say, oh, that's good, or oh, that's bad. But the farmer's response is always, who's to say whether it's good or bad? And that, to me, epitomizes what this person said to you about trauma being a gift. Who's to say whether that trauma is good or bad? Who's to say whether, and I would even rephrase it, although, again, I understand the definition of the word trauma. Who's to say that this challenge, it's a challenge. We all have challenges in our life, and we can pass judgment on them. I'm going through a challenge of my own right now in my own personal life. And I got to tell you, I'm pretty damn optimistic about it all. I have no expectations of the future, but I feel good about the future, whatever it holds, because it's different this time. It's much different, just as when they declared a pandemic and we decided in this country, let alone around the world, to shut things down. We had never done that before. Never. Not in my lifetime anyway. Yet every other time that there's been when SARS and many of these other things started to go around the world, what did we do? Nothing. They tried to come up with a vaccine. I guess they have and all of that stuff. But that was the solution. We'll come up with a vaccine, but we're not going to shut things down. And this time we said, we're going to shut things down. And people, of course, didn't like it. But it was something different. And Einstein said it. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Guess what? We're not insane. Might be a little crazy. But we're going to do something different. And it's going to be different when we come out the other side. We don't know what it's going to be, but it certainly is going to be different. And to me, that's exciting. And the other aspect of it was what opportunities that we don't even see yet that are going to come to us. And this is what's happened with you, in spite of or because of the bombing, the Boston Marathon bombing, which was, from one observation, horrific. It was terrible. I could not believe that something like that, let alone, of course, 20 years ago, 9/11, could ever happen in our own country. And yet, there seems to be a breeding in our own country going on of these people. But you and I, say, you know what? We don't have to live this way. Now, I'm curious about something, and I want to get into the movie too, and of course all of the various participants, famous and infamous and not so famous or infamous. But when you still live in Boston?
I do.
And do you still travel the route of the marathon that you were in?
I do.
And how do you feel? Do you still feel fear?
No.
Do you feel fear or anxiety or anything of this nature?
No, not anymore. I don't.
And that's extraordinary, because a lot of people would have trouble going through that space where they experienced the trauma, like going back to the house where they experienced the abuse that they did, or the workplace. I mean, I still remember my workplace back in Phoenix where I was working in an extremely hostile work environment. The general manager treated me as if I just killed his best friend and wouldn't talk to me. And I didn't find out until after I left why. But it's like, it didn't make any difference. It's like, what the hell? You know? So what about the people involved? Now, not just the others who were injured, but the perpetrators. I'm not asking specifically of those individuals, but have you made peace with the actions of others in that regard?
I have. It was not easy, and it took me years to do it, but I have at this point.
What was the process that you went through?
So for me, the first year was all about facing my terror and facing my fears. So I was a spectator that day. It was my very first, so even though I've been born and raised just outside of Boston, I went to university in Boston, I worked in Boston for years, I had never been to the marathon. And so I was a spectator this year with a dear friend of mine. Her son was running for the first time. And so, that first year was all about facing my terror and facing my fears. And so, they'd say, when you fall off the horse, what do they tell you to do? It's to get back up on the horse. Mm-hmm. It was not easy at all. And I know survivors today that have yet to go back to the marathon because they're afraid. And I get it. I was there too. Mm-hmm. And so year one, I went back and I walked as far as I could. I had sustained quite a few injuries, one of which is I couldn't walk normal for the first 5 months. So the fact that I was able to walk 9 miles in the first year of the marathon was huge a year later. So the first year was all about facing my fears, facing terror. Honestly, I thought, great, I'm pivoting. Life is going to be good again, right? Well, no, actually, what ended up happening was I had the next layer, which was rage. I had to deal with my rage. Right. And so the trial had started in the next year. I'm starting to realize the real impact it's had on my life. I mean, literally everything from financial, physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, all of it. And I remember being asked to prepare a victim impact statement. And I struggled with that, actually. It took me several months to write it. And in that process, I really got how rageful I was. I mean, it was anger exponential. And there was this one particular moment that I want to share, which is I was leaving a survivors group meeting in one of the local hospitals in Boston. Given that I'm born and raised inside of Boston, we cut people off. It's normal, right? And when you're from there, you don't think anything of it. And so this particular night I was heading home and a truck cut me off. And I instantly went into road rage, instantly. And fortunately, the driver made the light. I did not. And when the light turned red and I stopped my car, I started to sob. Who is this person? And I realized in that moment that a terrorist lived inside of me.
Wow.
And if I acted on my rage and anger, I'd be no different than them. And that frankly horrified me. And so I went on this journey of I need to learn how to heal that rage and anger. The other thing that was happening at this time was I had made progress in my healing journey, but every time I had a rageful bout, I would have a setback. And I'd get more upset that I was, that I would have these setbacks, right? So I was perpetuating my own rage. And I've realized I'm drinking my own poison. Wishing that it was inflicting harm on those two young men who placed the bombs. Well, that's not how it works. And so I was like, okay, there's got to be, like Einstein said, right? The same thinking that got you into the situation, you've got to change your thinking. And so I had to rethink about how I was handling the situation. And I had to treat myself with compassion and recognize I was going through a really challenging time. And I had to ask myself, how would I treat someone else that was going through this? And I would basically, whatever answer I came up with, that's what I would give to myself. And so I went on this journey of really loving myself having compassion for myself. And it was during that journey that gave me the courage, albeit it took some time, to forgive them. Now, I'll be honest, I was like, how could I ever forgive them? Life as I knew it was over because of this experience. And so for me, it was like forgiving the unforgivable. How do you do that? How do you do that? But I recognized every moment of every day that I was holding on to that, I was a prisoner to that experience. And I didn't want to spend the rest of my life imprisoned to that experience. And for me, what I found was forgiveness was my get out of jail card, if you will, right? It was my freedom. And it had nothing to do with them. And that's what our mind tells us, right? Like, how could we, if I forgive them, then I'm silently telling them it's okay. Well, it's not okay. But really what forgiveness does is it breaks the chains and sets us free. And when that happened, the rage that I felt inside of me began to dissolve. And I was just overwhelmed with peace. And for the very first time, Richard, I had compassion for those two young men who I hated and despised and frankly would silently contemplate how I would take their lives.
You're listening to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, and we are in conversation with Jennifer Kaufman. She's got a multiplicity of roles in this film entitled There's Got to Be More to Life, Transforming Through Trauma, from surviving to thriving. She is not only a screenwriter for this movie and a music editor, she is also one of the experts, and rightly so, as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I want to tell you a little bit about Jennifer. As she's shared already with you, she is an award-winning results coach, best-selling author, inspirational speaker, executive producer of the Emmy Award-winning and Telly Award-winning documentary, A New Leash on Life, The Canines for Warriors story, back in 2018. In 2019, Jennifer was a part of the production team that produced the first ever one-man Broadway show called Dream Big. Rudy Rudiger, beg your pardon, live, Rudy Rudiger, live on Broadway to a sold-out audience, and Jennifer launched her very own book, Shattered, in 2018, where she shares her personal story and journey of healing naturally from the 2013 I can't believe it's been that long. 2013 Boston Marathon bombing, and then in 2017, she received I can't believe they call it this, the Quilly Award for her contribution to Jack Canfield, who is a Santa Barbara native, his best-selling book, Mastering the Art of Success. She was included in the National Academy of Experts, Writers, and Speakers in 2016. In 2011, Jennifer received I'm going to stop there because this just goes on, and you are very accomplished. I don't want to slight you by any means, but you have done an awful lot. And one of the questions I would like to ask you is, how you perceive yourself as an expert, and an expert in what, may I ask, in reference to the movie?
Yeah, so I'm an expert in learning how to heal naturally. I'm an expert in how to rise up from trauma, and I'm an expert in telling the truth about what I've perceived is we are often fed, lies and misconceptions around trauma, and we live in a society. There's a lot of struggle and a lot of strife and a lot of people that are barely surviving, and we're told like this is the way, and I've come to understand it's not the way, and that we all have the right and we have the God-given ability to thrive in life, no matter what our circumstances is and no matter what we've been through.
Yeah. Personal story on my end. I got sucked into the presidential political melees or minutia. Let me rephrase that. Into the political quagmire of 2016 in September. And I wanted nothing to do with it, period. And when the man who won in 2016 won in 2017, and by the way, it took me 6 months to get unsucked from that, I had to go through 4 phases myself. And the first one was the absolute hardest to verbalize. Thank you. Oh, and I didn't ever want to use this word with this person. Thank you, teacher, for teaching me how not to behave. The next phase I went through was, I forgive you. But more importantly, I forgive myself for allowing myself to get drawn into this quagmire. The third phase was from a strictly humanitarian perspective, acknowledging that this man deserved to be here on the planet and to live out his role. I would ask the question, what is it that you're so afraid of that makes you behave this way? Because bullies, which I was the target of in school, grade school and high school, they say they are more afraid than those being bullied. So what is it that you're afraid of that makes you behave this way? I'm not asking you to change. God, I'm not asking you to change. I want to understand so that I can put this behind me and move on with my life. And then one of my guests said there's a 4th phase. And this has to come from the heart. And those 3 words, and I don't know whether you've come to that place with these 2 individuals, but I actually have had and have said this. And in spite of everything, I'm able to say to this person, this gentleman, as a human being to human being, I love you. I love you.
I have gotten to that stage, and I view those 2 young men as my soul brothers.
I know that sometimes they say, have you had a chance to visit with them, to meet them, to say hello, to confront them, to, in terms of bringing closure? Is that something that you feel is necessary in your life?
So one of them has passed away in the pursuit of capturing them. He died in that pursuit. So there's only one surviving that is imprisoned now, and I have attempted to meet with him, but that is not an option at this time. And I would, if given the option, I would sit before him. And let me just say, I had an opportunity in court to speak my victim impact statement, which I did. And he was there. So I had that brief moment with him there, amongst everyone else that was in the room or in court that day. But I have attempted to go see him in prison. That just hasn't been afforded to me at this time. But I would.
Jennifer Kaufman's my guest. I'm Richard Dugan. This is Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world, giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And we are here Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. with our special edition of Tell Me Your Story, streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. I'll give you the podcast and videocast information in just a few moments. Tell me about, you have a lot of people involved in this picture, in this documentary, and it's a wonderful, not only cast that participates, but also the folks behind the scenes, including yourself, although you're not just behind the scenes, you're in front of the camera as well. How did you go about the process of picking those people, choosing and selecting those individuals who would actually be, shall we say, interviewed for the beautiful, beautiful documentary?
They are actually mentors of mine, some of whom I work very closely with in learning how to heal naturally. Eileen McCusick is actually, one of my practitioners who I did, biofield tuning sessions with. Christy Whitman and Christina Hill have been mentors of mine for the last year and a half. So these are men and women that have played a role in my life in either direct helping me heal naturally and in teaching me things about how to do that, or They have been I've been inspired by their work. For example, Dr. Bruce Lipton, I've been inspired by his work and what he talks about, the biology of belief. And so I wanted to ask him, tell us more about this biology of belief and how we can shift our beliefs. And when we do so, we literally can create heaven on earth. And he talks about that in the film. And so we also wanted to take a scientific approach. We really want to bridge the gap between science and spirituality, right? And start to get people to understand there is a better way.
I want to ask you about that. And I it's sort of a loaded question, but I'm gonna I'm gonna ask it anyway. What is the better way?
Whatever serves you best.
Ooh.
Right. So that's the key. What I talk about in the film is my journey, and that's what happened to work for me. In no way am I saying it's a prescription for how other people should live their life. Here's the point. The point of why I was so drawn to put this film together was to literally inspire, encourage, and empower people to go find for themselves what works for them. Too many times, Richard, I know people in the survivor community who have, they're doing different things, but they're not seeing, positive results. In some cases, they've made marginal improvement, if any. In some cases, they've had setbacks. And it's like, why is that? Well, if that's not working for you, try something else. Go seek something else. So this is to open people's eyes and, and hopefully, increase their awareness of there are other alternatives out there.
From a structural or infrastructural standpoint, how many hours of video did the editors have to go through, and how long is this particular film? I realize that's not a real relevant aspect, but I know as an audio editor and now as a video editor myself with YouTube, my YouTube channel, Tell Me Your Story, where people can watch these particular videos. Sometimes you gotta go in and you gotta clean stuff up. For the most part, I keep things pretty raw from that standpoint, trimming the front and the back ends, but for the most part. But sometimes, and it used to be that when they were using literal film, actual film, there was a lot left on the cutting room floor. In this case, it's just deleting digits, zeros and ones. But I'm curious as to how many hours you ended with, and then how long the film ended up being anyway, because that ain't an easy process.
It is not. So we've been blessed. Honestly, we have over 60 hours of footage. That was not planned. It just happened. Some of these interviews were so rich and so, they were scheduled for 30 minutes, ended up being 60 to 90 minutes because the conversation was so rich. So what we're doing is we're creating a series, actually. So this is the first of a series.
Yeah.
And we wanted this to be the foundational aspect of it. And some of the other concepts that we'll go into in the next film is more advanced and deeper. So, so right now the film is, just over 90 minutes long. It's, about an hour and 40 minutes long. And that was not an easy process. In fact, when we went through the first round of editing, we got the film to a 4-hour segment. And
wow.
Like, 4 hours, obviously, who wants to watch that, right?
Yeah.
And so it has been, this, labor of love to get it to where it is. And as we got more refined, it was challenging. In fact, we're still refining. What you've seen is the director's cut. We felt strongly about releasing. Our target all along was to release on Veterans Day, November 11th, for various reasons. And we did that. It was not in the state we wanted it to be in for its final state. But, for those who have already purchased the film, they're going to get a free copy of the next final cut when we release it here in the next week. So, but we're excited about it. We're excited about the messages, because there's so much rich content in here that we feel strongly. And what's fascinating is each of these, folks that speak about their trauma, because they've all had trauma too. We had, one woman who lost her child. We have NFL players that, were sexually assaulted and as children, and they talk about it in the film. I mean, we talk about rising up from trauma and how you can go about living your best life, because we want you to have that too.
From surviving to thriving. The title of the documentary is There's Got to Be More to Life. The website is movies.influencer. Now that's spelled INFLUENCR. I know it's not spelled correctly, but it's not supposed to be. That's the website, .me. And we will be linked to that website. So if you are interested in watching this movie, and I hope you are, I really do, this isn't about trying to make a bunch of money for these folks. It's about opening your eyes to how we can transform through trauma from surviving to thriving. And it's one of the biggest, I will call it, slogans or phrases that we use here on this program. We want to move out of this survival mode. I've had enough. I'm 61 years old. I'm a young man, and I've had enough surviving. It's time for us to thrive. And I got to tell you that I still remember this back in 2000 during the presidential campaign back then. Al Gore was running. And I remember watching a speech of his. And it wasn't that I was a fan. It just happened to be on TV. And he was talking about, all the great things we're going to do together as people and blah, da, 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 da. And then he said, and here's what the government's going to do for you. And I turned it off. And I said, I don't want the government to do anything for me because it's not about the government. I remember the phrase back in the 1980 campaign with Ronald Reagan. And I remember the phrase that was used, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And every 4 years, I would answer that question, yes, but it had nothing to do with you.
Yes.
It had everything to do with me.
Exactly.
I did this. And if we don't take back our power, then in a manner of speaking, you can kiss it all goodbye. There are those who kind of are very pessimistic right now, and they think that it's already been kissed goodbye. I don't think so. I'm still optimistic about the future. Whether my future's in the States or in California, or if it's where I really, truly wish I was right now, Ireland. I love that country and its people. Been there twice. It was back in the early 2000s. And I want to live there. So, if there's a kidnapper out there who wants to kidnap me and take me to Ireland, I'm ready to go. Just leave a note letting them know that I will be kept safe and fed with porridge and Irish whiskey, and it'll be good. It'll be good. I am very, I do tend to go off on tangents sometimes, and I'm curious, was it very difficult to stay on target with the film? Because it seems like it would be so easy to go off in so many different directions. I mean, you've already said that you have enough film, enough video, if you will, for maybe 2 or 3 more documentaries. And I'm curious as to the second film. Will it be just part 2?
Well, the second film, it will be part 2 of this. And the working title is You Can't Make This Shit Up.
Okay. That is seriously the working title.
That is seriously the working title. Let me explain this, right? So we were told we could never produce a documentary in 6 months, that documentaries on average take 12 to 18 to 24 months to do.
Don't you love it when people tell you what you can and can't do?
Yes. It's like putting gasoline on a fire. It just stokes me, actually. I'm like, okay, great. We're going to do it anyway. And so, but it was fascinating. So a classic example, we were supposed to start filming in Sedona, Arizona in June. And all these things happened, forest fires, there were, all these different things that happened. And we were told we couldn't go. And then, but something kept nudging, saying, no, just keep planning, keep going. You're gonna do this. Actually, it was July, not June. And a week and a half before we're ready to go, our cinematographer is ready, booked to go, and he messages us and says, I can't make it. I have a family issue and I can't come. Well, how are we going to film? So, the first notion was, oh my gosh, we're going to have to stop. We're going to have to reschedule. And we had multiple people planned. It was just all lined up. And it was about trusting the universe, trusting that there would be another option. And I didn't have one in the moment. Well, what ended up happening was, and my cinematographer is amazing. Love him, love him, love him. But actually another amazing cinematographer just so happened to show up, just so happened to be available. And he used to be on the production team for Anthony Bourdain. And he's like, sure, I'll come out and film with you guys. And it was like, that has just been kind of this journey of like, when you're committed to something, not attached, but committed to something, you have these obstacles. It's life, right? Life will throw you challenges and obstacles. It's what do you do with them? How do you choose to respond? Do you respond or react? Now, to be candid, I sometimes still react, right? And, but it's like, okay, pause. Maybe there's something better. Maybe there's something else that's meant to happen here. And it's just, that has been like the evolution of the making of this film. It's like, you can't make this shit up. And it just ended up being like the perfect thing that happened at that time.
Extraordinary. And I can attest to that same synchronicity in my life. And it was an amazing thing. That's how we got here to Santa Barbara. I lost my job at a radio station in Phoenix because it was sold and the owners weren't keeping any of the old staff. And my wife quit her job the day after my last day, and it was because of a hostile work environment. And we're sitting there watching TV, and she comes, sits next to me, and she says, I'm scared. She says, I feel like we're on the edge of a precipice. Well, another definition would be of a cliff. And I have always been taught through every book I've read, every interview that I've done with people, every workshop and personal growth program I've been through, the one message that came through to me was this. When you come to the edge of a cliff, a la Thelma and Louise, you jump and you trust. And that's what we did. And I try to remind myself of that as certain challenges come up in my life. The universe has got my back. I just have to trust. I have to jump and I have to trust. And then sometimes I have to do things that the universe is asking me to do that seem contrary to my plans. No, I can't. No, that's kind. I don't want to do that because that creates. And then I go ahead and say, all right, okay, I'll acquiesce and I'll do it. And it turns out that if I hadn't done it, things would have been a whole lot worse. And so I think what you're talking about is so important, this whole aspect of synchronicity. Now, here's an interesting question for you. Was the Boston Marathon, again, 2013, was that your first Boston Marathon?
Yes.
And what was it that made you want to run in that marathon specifically?
I wasn't running. I was a spectator.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I apologize. So you had never been to one. This was your first one watching.
Yes.
And why did you want to go to the Boston Marathon and watch it?
To be honest with you, I didn't. I was helping a friend. A dear friend of mine's son was running for the first time, and she doesn't know her way around the city. So she's like, hey, will you come with me? Because I know you can help me get to the finish line and we can see, her son. And I said, sure. I was doing it for a friend. Mm-hmm. Richard, my idea of running is behind a white ball, a soccer ball, softball, volleyball. Okay? Long distance running is not in my vocabulary.
Mine either.
So
okay.
I had no desire. And, I grew up playing team sports but now I have such an appreciation for what those people, train for and run for. And I will tell you, here's the thing. I went there for a friend. But when we decided to make a day of it, and we went a mile from the start line.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember seeing the first runners come by, and they were the disabled runners, okay? And I was in awe. Being an athlete, I was in awe. I saw men and women, some were blind, some were in one or two prosthetic legs, right? I was just simply in awe. I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I was so moved that I actually had tears in my eyes. I was actually inspired. And so, believe it or not, I literally went for a friend, but little did I know that I'd be inspired by that. I still had no desire to run it ever.
Right.
But little did I know that embarking on walking it in 2014 and then going back and finishing it in 2017 was a pivotal moment. Both of them were pivotal moments in my healing journey and helped me come full circle.
Jennifer Kaufman's our guest, and I have another question in that same line there, but I'm going to hold that for just a moment to remind you that you're listening to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and you can hear these podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and a bunch of other places on the internet where you can listen to them, but you can watch them too. We have a YouTube channel. It's called Tell Me Your Story. There's a guy with a hat. That's what you look for, as well as the banner, The Decade of Perfect Vision. And so hope that you will take the time to listen to or watch. I can tell you right now, I'm up to a whopping 45 subscribers. To me, that's pretty exciting. We're over 52, almost 53,000 listens in 4 years, in less than 4 years on SoundCloud and the other outlets. And I am thrilled to death that folks are listening and reposting the interviews. And I couldn't thank you enough. I want to ask you, Jennifer Kaufman, who is sharing with us a movie I hope that you folks will go see. And go see it online. You can see it online. It's called There's Got to Be More to Life. Transforming trauma that's actually through trauma, through trauma from survival to thrival, from surviving to thriving. I apologize for that. And you can go to the website, there's so much to remember, movies.influencer.me, and the influencer is INFLUENCR. And the E actually should be somewhere else, I think, but we won't talk about that. I want to ask you, Jennifer, we talk on this program about giving people choices and knowledge of those choices to help make their dreams come true. I personally believe I don't care what your situation is. You always have a choice. Have you ever looked back at the choice you made and questioned, what was I thinking? I didn't want to go in the first place. And was that maybe your intuition talking to you and you weren't really listening to it? Yes. I woke up that morning feeling very unsettled and I didn't understand why. But I made a commitment to my friend and I wasn't going to give up on that commitment. That's the truth. But I don't have any regret, actually. Looking back on it, it was my path. It was the experience I was meant to go through and live through, and frankly got me to where I am today. Now, I'll say, Richard, if you would say to me that I would, A, be 15 feet from the first of two explosions, live through that, and actually rise up from that horrific experience, and it was horrific, and then go on, do not just one, but two marathons, albeit the first one I didn't finish because I didn't have the strength to do that. And then where it led me next, I honestly pitch me now, I got an opportunity to be in Jack Canfield's book, Mastering the Art of Success, and sharing my insights and wisdom of how I rose up from trauma. I've been, producer of 2 Emmy award-winning Mission for Good films that help veterans and help veteran causes and nonprofit organizations, right? My life has meaning, it has purpose. And for the first time in my life, I feel fulfilled. Now, here's the thing. I have a lot of accolades. I have a lot of success. And one of the things I want your listeners to understand
is that, yes, I had childhood trauma and young adulthood trauma. And I was running from myself. I was running from my trauma, running from myself, trying to escape it, candidly. Right. And so I would have all these ambitious goals, and some of them I achieved, some of them I didn't yet. Right. And when I would reach those goals, I would have momentary, happiness, momentary, but it never lasted. And I'm like, I don't understand why, because I wasn't fulfilled. I hadn't dealt with my past trauma, and actually worked through it and get to a place where I was okay with me, all of me.
Yeah. That's an interesting observation. I had a guest on this program who was diagnosed with a form of cancer, stomach cancer, and he had the stomach removed and all this stuff. And I recently, in July, late July of this year, of 2021, I was taken to the emergency room, and I had an emergency gallbladderectomy, if you will. I had a golf ball-sized gallstone and a very infected gallbladder. I learned that the metaphor, if you will, of the gallbladder is anger. It has to do with anger issues. Yes, physiologically, it's the organ that produces the bile that helps to process the food, but that has angers. And I have to tell you, after that surgery, every time I would, and I'll just use the metaphor of spilling milk, every time I would spill milk, the previous reaction would be, oh no, da, da, da. Now I spill milk and it's, and I laugh. Okay? It's an instant, and then it's laughter. This gentleman, I asked, what's the metaphor for your stomach cancer? And he had never thought of it before. So I ask you, what is the metaphor for the experience of being in the Boston Marathon bombing for you? Because it seems to me like, and I don't want to be flippant. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It blew me open, right? So here's the thing, right? I lived my life behind a facade and behind invisible walls, because I didn't want people to know that at age 11 I was sexually assaulted, right? I had a lot of shame and a lot of, guilt around that, even though I was a kid, right? I didn't ask for that. It just happened. And I had all these things, and I didn't know how to deal with it. Now, the people that did that to me threatened my life and threatened my family's life. So in that moment, I had to become my very best, actress. I couldn't let my family or anyone know about that. So I carried that secret for 20 years. Mm. And then when my dad died suddenly, when I was 30 years old, completely 3 days after Christmas, we had just reconciled after 10 years of not speaking together. It was 2.5 months after 9/11 happened, right? And all of a sudden he dies out of nowhere. And it was in the grieving process of my dad that all of these other traumas were actually coming up, and I was having flashbacks, and I thought I was going crazy, Richard, right? And I had to work through all of that. So to answer your question, this experience blew me open. And I like to use I think it's called kintsugi. It's in the Japanese culture, when something of value breaks, they actually, put it back together with liquid gold. It becomes more valuable. And so I started to recognize that for me, although the bombings had me feel shattered and broken, I then had the opportunity to put the best pieces of myself back together again and just be my authentic self. I didn't have to hide from, these other traumas that happened in my life. I didn't have to hide behind them. I actually can just own them and speak about them. They don't have the charge that they do anymore. So for me, it was like, it helped me become myself.
I will tell you that from a very early age in this business, and I've been in it for over 40 years, I worked for 15 years for a Christian radio station. This is sort of where I developed this philosophy and why I share my own personal story throughout many of these programs, to which an individual who has been following me for 40 years could write an unauthorized autobiography. Okay? And that's okay, because this is the philosophy. God already knows everything about me, being omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, all right, as I perceive. What difference does it make if 8 billion other people know and most of them don't care? They're too busy surviving to care about little old me. It's almost like what someone told me some years ago when I moved to California and I was upset over the stupidity of people driving. And they would say, Richard, they did not wake up this morning saying, let's get Richard. It's nothing personal. And I have to tell you, I was both gratified and I was hurt. Gratified that it wasn't personal, hurt because they didn't care enough about me to make it personal. And I say that tongue in cheek. And it's like, when I'm gone, what difference is it going to make anyway? But I'm not going to be gone for another 40 plus years. I hope to keep doing this with people like you for the next 40. God, if the good Lord allows 56, I don't care how. I'm hoping to surpass Larry King. I wish I'd had a chance to interview that man before he left this earth. Or as Bernie Siegel chastised me when I was talking about his wife who had died, I would say, when your wife transitioned, what do you mean transitioned? She didn't transition. She died. What's the problem? Why can't you use the word die? And I loved that. I say, okay, I will use die from now on. So I love that, man. He's been on this program many times. But it's one of those things that is so fascinating to me because we're so worried about our privacy. And I get it, okay? For those people who are concerned, I get that. But when you're gone, what difference is it going to make? And besides, I personally believe what comes around goes around. Karma. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And when somebody plays that kind of a game with you or your information or what have you, hey, then what you do is you have them declare you dead. You take on a new name by the court and you come alive again and you start over. There's ways of doing this, folks. It's like I've always said, there's always a workaround, Jeff and Jennifer. There's always a workaround. Okay, it's like, you were talking about, this one, what was it, director who you wanted and you couldn't get him. So you got this other director who the synchronicity is phenomenal. So I believe that there's always a workaround and, there's always plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It just depends upon your willingness to allow that inner voice to speak to you. Do you now listen and follow the promptings more so than you ever did before?
Absolutely. And can I do it even more? Yes. But I do listen to the promptings. And also, so here's the thing that I think at least I still struggle with from time to time. I don't want to say struggle, but deal with is that you have this vision, right? And so when we have this vision, we think it's going to play out a certain way. And when it doesn't, right? I sometimes go, well, hold on, this is a play, but I have to reframe it. Every time there's a pivot or every time there's a challenge, I go, oh, right, the best is yet to come. It may not look the way I thought it was going to look. It may not, and all of that. But when I can go, right, the universe has my back. They've got my best interest. So something even better is coming down the pike. I might not know what it is yet. And I just like,
yeah.
Right. It's just like, there's just like this. Now, in the beginning, I'm like, I might be all worked up for a moment. And then I'm like, whoa. Oh, right. I forgot. The universe has my back. And this is, for me, this is actually a really pivotal point, Richard. I did not get this until the bombings happened, that life was happening for me, not to me. I was 42 when that happened. I probably understood that lesson when I was 44. Oh, right. Life is happening for me, not to me. I'm not being punished. I'm not, these things didn't happen in my life because I'm a bad person. They just happened. And now, I have the ability by my own choice and free will to rise up from it or not. I choose. Am I surviving or thriving? It's a choice, folks, and it's a way of being.
So, are you thriving or surviving?
I am thriving. Right? And because thriving to me is doing what I love to do. Thriving for me is, But I want to be clear, thriving has its own definition, right? So what's thriving to you? Thriving to me is being able to live the life that I want to live, how I choose to live it, doing what I love to do, surrounded by the people I want to be around. That's what it means for me. And it's like, do I wake up, am I on purpose? Do I feel fulfilled? Am I making a difference in the world? For me, that's part of thriving. I get excited about being on shows like this with you, Richard, now. But to be honest with you, the thought of coming out and talking about healing the terrorist within me, that's pretty audacious. That's pretty bold. But that's the truth. That was my journey.
It's interesting that you put it that way because, and I do understand it. I do understand where you're coming from when you say healing the terrorist within me, because we all kind of have that. I'm not a fan of the phrase, although I've never understood how in the world after 9/11 they came up with the war on terror. So we're fighting against an emotion, are we? Terrorism, not terror. I'm a person who likes grammatically correct attack phrases. It's a war on terrorism, not terror. I mean, good grief. If that's the case, then we're going to go after Freddy Krueger and that clown, whatever his name is, and blah, 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 blah. But one of the things that I have noticed, and I've actually had to come to grips with this myself, there's a biblical passage that says, "Be ye perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect." And I wondered about that. And I thought about it, and I did some research on it, and went back to the Old Testament, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And what I found was that perfection has nothing to do with doing. It all has to do with nothing more than being. Just being. That's all you have to do to be perfect, because that's the way God is, if you will. And again, I just use that term because most people know it. Just be who you are. Just be. And then the other part of it is that, again, using the Christian philosophy and that model of the pre and post sacrifice, okay? Obviously, the Father who created us, okay, in the context, obviously saw some value in us to set up a sacrifice, okay? We had to have been priceless before the sacrifice, which means that after the sacrifice, if it's possible to be more than priceless, that's what we became. Now, what father would throw his children out if they did not do exactly as, this group and that group and the other group says you have to behave and do and be and act and da-da-da-da-da-da-da? I think that my parents, obviously, let's just say I was an addict. There's going to come a point of tough love saying, no, you can't come back until you get your stuff together. And I understand that. That doesn't mean that they don't still love me.
Right.
But until I get my act together, they are not going to commune with me in the same way that they used to. And that's one of the things that has always thrown me about this whole, I call it a dichotomy within religion, within specifically the Christian philosophy, as I like to call them philosophies, is, either you're with the in crowd or you're not. And I always thought that the church in particular was for the sinner, not the saint. And yet, in the 80s and early 90s, with all of the televangelistic crap that was going on, and boy, I sadly remember it. It's like it's one of those things, once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Like Jimmy Swaggart crying because I have sinned against God. And it's like, well, I told you 5 years ago that you're going to get caught in the very thing you rail against. And he constantly railed against sexual immorality. And he got caught in sexual immorality. And so did the bakers, and the list goes on. And so, it's one of those things where either we are or we aren't accepted and loved and nurtured by the universe. Either we are or we aren't. And I say we are all the time. And I take responsibility for my life and the way that it is now, and the choices that I've made in the past and the choices that I'll make that'll put me wherever it is that I'll be in the future. And I'll stand before God and say that. Hey, I did the best I could with what you gave me. If that's not good enough, I'm going where you want me to go anyway. So there's nothing I can do or say anyway, but I'm just saying. Your thoughts on all of that?
So I think, Richard? I think it's all teaching us how to love. Yeah. Right? At the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's about teaching us how to love and accept ourselves. Yeah. And when we can do that, then we have more love and appreciation to give to others, right? So the dichotomy, as you talk about it, right? So, my inner critic ended up being a terrorist. And it took an act of terrorism for me to see and become aware that the terrorist lived inside me. It didn't manifest on that day. It had been harboring. It just came to the surface and got recognized after that experience. So you talk about that, right? Like, I've come to understand life is a mirror. And if you don't like the way your life is, look in the mirror because you are responsible for it and you have the power to change it. Now, let's be clear. In hindsight, I wish I hadn't had to go through that experience, but I did. And I learned from it, right? And it woke me up. It got me to see. I was a loving person to other people, but boy, I looked in the mirror and I was like, who's that person? Like I cut myself down. I was negative. My self-talk was awful. Even though I had moments of success and stuff. And it was just, this experience taught me how to love myself in ways I never had before. And to teach and to actually show compassion for myself when I was struggling.
Amazing. Well, I'll tell you, it's unfortunate or fortunate, I guess it depends upon your perspective, who's to say whether it's good or bad, that we go through some of those challenges. But the reality is that we have. And I think one of the other lessons, too, in this process that you are describing is not having regrets. What a waste of time and energy to regret, because it's like, okay, I've got this tapestry and it's my life. And there are all these little threads and I'm gonna pull those out of there because I want to get rid of them. I mean, guys, that's what they usually do. Oh, there's a loose thread. I'll just pull that out of there. I'll yank that out of there. And now the shirt isn't as nice as it was. Now the tapestry isn't as nice as it was, and it isn't what it was before I pulled on that thread. So I kind of put it this way. Okay, let me see if I can figure out. I'll go to the YouTube and I'll see about how to cross-stitch stuff so that I can re-stitch that loose thread in there. Maybe I can't. Maybe I'll just tuck it in so at least it's a little neater. And then I'll move on because I can't change the past. And that past, all of it, makes me who I am today.
Absolutely.
And if I pull that thread, then I'm not the person that it's kind of like some of those time machine movies and programs where a person wants to go back and correct this, that, or the other thing. And then they go back to their present and everything is different. And then they wonder why. Oh, now we got to go back again and I got to put things back the way they were. But now it's too late because you've already disturbed the tapestry. You've already changed the threads. And, it's like you going into that movie and it's here, let's put this piece that we cut out. Let's put that in place of this piece here. And now the movie isn't what it was. And it doesn't have the impact that it once had. And that's why we need to, so to speak, leave the movie of our lives alone. Don't try to edit it. We can change our perception. And that actually, I think, sort of explains your process. You changed your perception not only of the event, but also of yourself.
Absolutely. And I had to rise up from this good or bad. It's not good. It just is. Right? Like it just is. When we get into that place of good or bad, we're actually creating judgment. And then that judgment creates separation, right? And then that just like takes us down this path of struggle. And it's just like accepting what is. We don't have to like it, to be clear. But just accepting what is, when we accept what is, we can shift and we can actually pivot and go, okay, now what? right? We actually have power when we do that. But if I judge a situation as good or bad, right? Well, then that actually shifts things, right? It just is.
Yeah. Yeah. Jennifer Kaufman is my guest. I'm Richard Dugan. This is Tell Me Your Story. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true here on the program, where we're looking for those new ways of living. And we hope that you are along for not just the ride, but for the transformation that is taking place. It is happening as we speak. You may not feel it fully, but I can tell you that I do feel it. I feel it in many different areas of my life. I will also give you one quick example here of listening to my still small voice. I refer to my still small voice as my friend. And I was walking back to the radio station. I had just gone to Starbucks, yes, and I got my nice iced latte that I love so much. Special recipe that I created. And I come to the corner of the intersection where the station is, and there's a pawn shop. There's a convenience store on one corner. There's a pawn shop on another. There's another building on the other, and da-da-da-da-da. And I've been looking for a computer to be able to do audio and video editing on. I have been looking for months and months, maybe years, several years. The computer that I currently have, a desktop computer, is a Windows XP circa 2006. Yes, exactly. Fall off of your chair and get back up again. I need something that's better. Especially because the video editing software is not compatible with Windows XP. So I'm standing there with my latte and I'm getting ready to go back to the radio station and go inside, go inside, go inside, go inside, go inside. And I'm not ignoring it. I'm just thinking, well, I'm going back to the radio station, but I got time. I don't have to be back till 2 and it's 12:30. Okay, I got time. So I turn around, I put my mask on, and I go in. And I start looking at the laptops they have out on display. So I finally go up to one of the people behind the counter and I say, are these the only laptops you have? Any others with wide screens? And he said, well, no. I think we have a Dell back here. And it looks fairly new. I mean, it's got a terabyte of hard drive. It's Windows 10. It's a touch screen. I was amazed. I got my computer. And $300, but we're doing Black Friday right now, and so we're knocking 25% off. $75 off. $225 plus tax, $244. Not bad. I got my computer, which what I love about it is that I can hook it up to my larger screen monitor at home so that I have a better view. And I can also hook up a wireless mouse and keyboard. So actually the laptop is more of an interface than anything else, okay? But whammo, there you go. And I was looking and I waited and I was patient. You know, I wasn't in a big hurry, even though I really was in a hurry, but there's the universe helping to provide that, and it has some other accoutrement on it for doing videos like this, has a built-in camera and all of that good stuff, and now all I have to do is go through the process of installing the software that I need, and away we go. So I listened, and I followed the promptings. I wrote this, I was in a personal growth program that was an outgrowth of EST from the 70s, and this was in the 80s. It's called LifeSpring. And in one of the programs, they wanted us to take this big, wide, long piece of white construction paper and a Sharpie and write down a statement. And my statement was, in cursive at first, I will listen to, and then under that, I wrote in block letters, and follow the promptings of my friend. And I still have that. And I encourage everybody to do the same because it's part of one of the campaigns that we promote here on the program, Jennifer. People getting involved in the Decade of Perfect Vision, the 2020s, where we encourage people to go within, where there is perfect vision, and listen to that still small voice and just be quiet and calm and relax and listen to the inspiration and the encouragement and the education, the wisdom for them. Do you spend much time doing that?
Oh, I do it every day. Every day I do it. And I want to share something with your viewers and listeners, is that it's one thing to listen. The other thing is to trust and act in that wisdom. So I want to share a couple of things with you, because when I was in the hospital in the ER, right, the doctors and nurses wanted to admit me. And I had that inner voice that said, you've got to learn how to heal naturally, something I did not know how to do. My background's in business. I don't know anything about health other than basic nutrition and health and but that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to, and it's like in that moment, what do I do? Do I listen to the doctors and nurses who believe that I need to stay there for additional, tests and all that other stuff, not knowing if I was going to live for the rest of the day, candidly? And I'm like, is this really where I want to be if this were my last day? No, absolutely not. But it took courage to listen to that inner voice, because I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to heal naturally. I have no knowledge how to do that. So I thought, but it led me on a path. And by taking that first step, which for me was, discharging myself out of the hospital, even though against all of the experts' opinion of what I should do. Well, I'm the expert of me.
Mm-hmm.
So my intuition was telling me I needed to leave. And I had a choice. And boy, it was more compelling because I had so many other people that were telling me the opposite. So it's having the trust and the courage to listen to your own inner voice, people. And when you do, life will become easier for you. It doesn't mean you don't have challenges, but life becomes, I use this phrase, life becomes this magic carpet ride.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've been taking that magic carpet ride for over 40 years or more. I don't know about you, Jennifer, but I have with everything that has happened in my life, I've always felt like I've been in the right place at the right time. Even when I was involved in a non-injury car accident that totaled our Volvo, and we were able to then buy a truck and then return via a travel trailer. Even when I totaled a Toyota van I was driving and thought I was going to die, and it was just me, and I did some swerving, even when I went through my first divorce, even when I got bullied in school, even when I got harassed and was working in a hostile work environment at that one radio station, all of that has created the person that people see now. And I'm a work in progress, as we all are.
Me too.
Or as my song that I have written says, I'm a good man doing the best I can. I'm just a good man doing the best I can. And that's all I can do is the best I can. And the best we can do. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. I can see you've got something to say.
Well, I just want to say, Richard, what if we have that perspective, right? So we get triggered. People hurt us I don't believe people are malicious. I don't believe people are out to get us. But what if we actually use that perspective of, everybody's just doing the best that they can, and have some compassion and some, we don't know what other people are going through, right? Somebody might react to something because they're having a really bad day, or they just found out some really, challenging news.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What if we all come from, we're just simply doing the best that we can and love each other where we're at?
Yeah. I don't look at the drivers in California anymore as a bunch of people doing stupid stuff. What I now look at is a bunch of people who are just like me, who are distracted by a lot of different things, for right or wrong. They're distracted for a lot of reasons. And they're trying to get from point A to point B, and they just forget to do this, or they forget that they forget what's around them. Their awareness is not sharp. And again, as you just well stated, they're just doing the best they can. And that diffuses any frustration that I feel, because I'm doing the same thing. And who's to say that I haven't made some moving violations, shall we say? None of us is perfect in that regard. But we're all, again, we don't want to get into accidents. But, guess what? It happens. It happens. And what we do is we pick up and we get back on that horse, as you mentioned earlier. We just get back up on that horse. This is Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and my guest is Jennifer Kaufman, and she is executive. Well, what is it now? You're an expert. You are the screenwriter. You're also part of the music editing team of the film, the documentary. Oh, there's got to be more to life. Transforming through trauma from surviving to thriving. It's now available on movie.influencer.me. We will be linked, so you don't have to spell it. We'll be linked to the website so that you will be able to go there and purchase a ticket, as it were, and you can watch that movie. I think it'll be inspiring for you. Jennifer, we have run out of time here, but I have 3 final questions that I love to ask my guests. You may have addressed them during the program, but I like to ask them directly. But I want to thank you for giving us so much time, and I hope that you will come back again to talk about part 2 of There's Got to Be More to Life, as well as other projects that you're working on along these same lines for our program, Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and it would be an honor and a privilege to come back and play with you again. Next time, I'll get my vocals ready to do backup singing, though, in the beginning.
Oh, perfect. I would love to do a duet. I think that would be a lot of fun. I also will pick a different song, though, because there is more to this life, and we're finding it, and we are thriving in the very best way that we know how, and we hope that you folks are, too, by listening to this program on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., as well as 9 a.m. on Wednesday mornings. That's our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We also hope that you will listen at those times on the stream at richarddugan.com. The podcasts are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon Music, and many other locations on the internet. And I hope that you will take a listen. But you can also watch these programs on YouTube, the YouTube channel Tell Me Your Story and Richard Dugan. Look for the guy with the hat, okay? I'm going to buy a new one here shortly that is a little nicer looking. But nonetheless, I'll still be wearing the hat. And we also hope that if you can support the work that we're doing here financially, we would greatly appreciate that. We have a PayPal account. It is for your security as well as ours. And when you go there to donate to what we're doing here, any amount is greatly appreciated. They're going to ask you for an email address, where to send it. Richard@richarddugan.com. That's simple. Richard@richarddugan.com. And then please participate in the Decade of the Perfect Vision 2020s. And spend time in that quiet, calm, peaceful place, listening to that still small voice, which is your intuition, your higher self, the divine self, whatever you want to call it. It will never, ever put you in harm's way, but it may challenge you, as it has me, and it's worth it. I guarantee, as Jennifer has said, it's going to make your life a miracle. You're going to have a blast on that magic carpet ride. With all of that being said, Jennifer, the first of the 3 final questions on this program anyway. Who is Jennifer Kaufman?
Who is Jennifer Kaufman? I'm somebody who inspires impossible transformation.
What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you are doing now?
I want to help humanity rise up from adversity and trauma in life and empower them to see that they can thrive no matter what.
And finally, what is your life's purpose?
To teach what I've learned from my experiences and to help more people rise up and thrive in the world.
And once again, we are so glad that you are healed from your experiences of 8 years ago, and hope that you never have an experience like that, but also knowing how to work through those kinds of challenges in your life, as you have shared with us on how we can do the same. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to lol.